So hello and welcome to Lewis Nichols Live Stories in association with a man himself, Mr. Shane Solomon. And I'm really excited for my next guest today because we've done loads of interviews over the phone, Zoom, but this is the first time we have ever met in person. So let's say hello to singing sensation Kiki Dee. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Let's shake hands.
Thank you. I'll give you a hug actually. Because you've come down to Cornwall. Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure.
What's it like so far?
Oh, great. I mean, we got here yesterday and we're going to be having fun today after we've done the shoot. So, I was just saying, I'm at that point in my career where I can just, pull back a little bit, enjoy myself.
Just relax.
I thought this sounded like a smashing trip.
Well, today we're going to talk about your career from kind of where it all started to where you're at now, because, you're still touring, you're still going live and sounding incredible. So where did your love and passion for music come from? Did you kind of grow up around it? Were your family into music?
Well, really, I'm the youngest of 3 children, and I got attention at home. I was born in Bradford, Yorkshire, and the way I got attention was singing, because I discovered it, when I was about 5 or 6, I kind of had a reasonable voice. So if anybody came to visit, I'd go, "Mom, can I sing? Can I sing?" So that's how it started, really, showing off.
Well, you've done this kind of your whole life. You had a very brief stint. Was it in Boots the Chemist? Was that kind of?
I did.
That was what you call your real job that you had for was it
12 weeks?
12 weeks.
I lasted 12 weeks when I left school. I left school at 15, actually, and so I had a job in Boots for 12 weeks, and there was another girl who just left school on the men's counter as well. By the way, Lewis, do you know what our bestseller was on the men's counter?
What's that?
Wilkinson's Sword Edge Razor Blades. Anyway, so one day we were giggling so much, this girl and I, that we nearly knocked the counter over. So I decided that this is not for me. And so stuck to the singing and carried on from there.
Obviously, it's difficult to then make that into your career, a paid job, the music industry, because it was so competitive. So how did you start kind of earning your money, getting noticed, and then having it as your full-time job? When did that moment happen?
Well, around this time, when I was 14, 15, 16, I used to sing locally with bands, rock bands, pop bands. And I also got a job, believe it or not, when I was 16, singing with a dance band in Leeds. It was at the Astoria Ballroom, which no longer exists. I sang things like, Ella Fitzgerald songs, I Wish You Love, and the pop records of the day with the dance band, and which was a great experience. And then one day, a sales rep came in from Philips Fontana Records, and he liked my voice, and he called someone in London and said, "There's a girl I think you should audition." And basically, to cut a long story short, I got a record deal when I was 16.
It's really young, isn't it, to be signed?
When you think about it, I was just a kid, really. And it's almost like a movie, because my dad and I drove down in our family car and stayed in North London at a B&B, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, her B&B, and we went to do the audition, and it was in this place called Stanhope Place, right near Hyde Park corner, Oxford Street, Hyde Park, Park Lane. So there I was at 16 with my dad, coming down from Bradford, and all very exciting.
Wow.
Got the part, as they say.
That's incredible. 16 years old. So what was the deal like? So was it for an album? Was it for a selected amount of songs? And were there chart hits from that first record deal?
Well, it was sort of a bit like an experiment in a way. They signed me up for a couple of years, and I did all these tracks for them. And, you'd have proper sessions with orchestras, and everything in those days, because of the technology, was live. You might do your vocal at the end of the session, but there was no kind of dubbing and auto-tuning the voice and all that. And I do remember Jimmy Page did one session for me before he was in Led Zeppelin. He was a session player in London, young whiz kid guitarist. So I made these. I made this record, and nothing happened chart-wise. it was the time when Lulu and
Yeah.
Cilla Black, Dusty, and Sandy Shaw, they were all having hits during the 60s. And I felt a bit left out, But, it wasn't meant to be. The irony is in life, when you're young and you've got all the time in the world is when you think you've got no time.
Yeah.
And I was so desperate, to do it and get a hit. And so, yeah, I was young, of course, You can't put old heads on young shoulders.
We've spoke about this before, and I found it so incredible because you were the first white British artist to be signed to Motown. I mean, that's when you reflect now, that's a huge achievement and kind of an accolade because it just shows how powerful and soulful your voice was to get. So how did you feel when that happened?
It was bizarre. I mean, just ending off the last conversation, there was a song called On a Magic Carpet Ride I recorded for Fontana. And in the 70s, it became a Northern Soul hit. And if you've got a copy of it now, it's probably worth about £600 or £700 because it's such a rare single.
Wow.
But towards the end of the Fontana situation, again, another phone call. In fact, if I ever wrote the book, Lewis, which I probably won't because I can't remember what I did last week. Yeah. What was I saying?
You were talking.
See, I've lost the plot already.
You've lost it. We're going into Motown, but you were saying another call came in.
So a call came through from America. Someone's son in the admin side of Tamla Motown Records had heard my voice, and they wanted to record an English singer, a European singer. I went to Detroit and made an album.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know. So absolutely amazing. And I met Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye.
What was Stevie Wonder like?
Well, I met him loads of times after that because he was a big mate of Elton's, through the years. And just to meet those guys, was phenomenal, really.
Did they give you advice? Because obviously you were very young. So did you ever kind of approach them and say, look, could I get some advice on the industry? Did you ever have those conversations with Stevie Wonder or Marvin?
Oh, well, I wouldn't have had the confidence to... Stevie Wonder is... But years later, in 81, I was doing a track in London in a studio. And I got a message that Marvin Gaye was next door and did I want to come and listen to his new single because he knew I was in the building. And I went next door and they played Sexual Healing.
Oh,
so that was a moment.
What a story.
Yeah, isn't that great? I love my stories.
Were you treated well with Motown, the whole experience? Because I know it's quite the process on recording the album was actually quite short. It was only a few weeks.
Yeah, I wasn't there long. It's a funny thing because, I'm talking to you now as a much older woman and I'm trying to remember what it felt like.
Yeah.
Because, of course, I'm coming from now,
More of a reflection now,
But I think that I was a bit disappointed that I didn't become the new soul singer, the big diva, when I came back home. But, ironically, things happen for a reason. And it's always an experience I'm very proud of that I went there and recorded. And of course, then I accidentally met Elton John and through his manager who was a friend. And so, things happen and that's life.
Did you feel it was kind of an experiment with you with Motown? Do you think they were kind of testing the waters on how it would work? Did you ever kind of feel, or, looking back now, do you think that was more of an experiment?
I think it was. I think it was an experiment. And also I was wise enough to know, I just had an instinct that my time would come.
Yeah.
And so that's how I felt.
Well, you just mentioned, obviously, Elton John, and as working relationships go, you two are just perfect. You really are. So what was it like when you
We're
first
like
met?
Fanny and Johnny Craddock, as Elton used to say.
What was he like when you first met? Did you just click? Because I know we spoke in the car and you'd have a lot of banter with him, but did you just click from the outset? Because musically, you're both very passionate. So I'm assuming that's kind of the foundations of the relationship.
We did click. I went to meet him at his flat in London. I can't even remember where it was now. And it was a funny night because his mum was coming over and so was Neil Young.
Wow.
So I am meeting Elton John, and who's beginning to happen. He's beginning to really, early 70s. It's cooking, you know, the Elton John career. And so I think for some reason we decided to have champagne, and I was sent to the kitchen to get the glasses out of this glass cupboard. And of course I slid the cupboard across like this and knocked all the champagne glasses open, which was a moment. And Elton thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And that was how
the
we
rest
met.
is history. What's your favourite thing about Elton? Because we all know him, you know, he's just a legend, he's an icon. But you know him really well, you know, and you're friends. So what's your favourite thing about Elton that maybe we don't know about?
His sense of humour.
Is he very funny?
He's hysterical. Yeah. I mean, if you work with him in the studio, it's just hysterical. There's so many things about him. He's a one-off. He's highly intelligent. He's very talented. And he's also got a really human side, you know.
Yeah.
And we always hit it off somehow. It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes you don't know why you hit it off with someone, and it's on a different level, isn't it? And, you know, we don't hang out together. We never did really, but we were just working together a lot. He produced 2 Kiki Dee albums on Rocket Records in the 70s. And so we were together touring, but we didn't, you know, go out to dinner together and things like that. Do you know what I mean? But I think he's a true friend because I don't need to see him.
And it's just like you've been together, you know, you said you could not see him for years, get together, and it's like it was yesterday.
Exactly.
I've got to obviously talk about Don't Go Breaking My Heart, because that song now is one of the most iconic tracks ever. I mean, it gets kind of butchered at karaoke. I've heard quite a few times, but it's just one of those songs that people love. So, you know, when you were working on the track and you heard the finished product, did you have a feeling this is going to be a big hit?
I think I thought it might be when I heard it on the radio for the first time. I thought, this sounds good on the radio, you know. And, you know, the funny thing is that I don't remember anybody at Rocket Records having any attachment to that track. You know,
wow.
Elton did his vocal in America and I did mine in London afterwards. I didn't say that at the time, but he was busy in America. And, we did a video. It took 20 minutes, you know, with me and dungarees and all that, you know. And, so no one was attached, and there it was, you know. You never know.
And that's the thing, you know, you look at Elton's kind of catalogue of music, that was his first number one, you know, and essentially you kind of worked with him and gave him his first UK number one. And when you think back, nowadays you stream, you know, and that's how you get in the charts. But back then you had to
sell. No idea.
But now, you know, back then you had to sell an awful lot of records to even get in the charts, let alone be number one. So did you kind of stand back and think, wow, this is happening now. This is all coming together. You're number one in the charts. You sold so many records to get that. Were you proud?
I was proud. I remember calling my mum and dad in Bradford, you know, and telling them I got to number one. And it was a wonderful thing, you know.
How did they react?
I mean, they were just the best parents. I was very lucky. I had a very happy childhood, very loving, you know, and that meant a lot, you know, to give them that pleasure. Yeah, it was lovely.
And it kept going, you know. We've spoke before, and my favourite song is I've Got the Music in Me, because it's got so much raw passion and power, and it's the sort of song you know live would be perfect. You know, the music, the arrangement. So did you write that song, or was it written for you? It
was written actually by, I had a band at the time called the Kiki Dee Band. And we were doing some touring with Elton, and we were going to be going to America and everything. And, you know, I said to the keyboard player in my band, we really don't have a lot of up-tempo songs. Have you got anything that you've written recently or in the last few years? Because we were young, you know. He said, not really. I've got this song called I've Got the Music in Me, but no one's done anything with it, you know. So we tried it out in rehearsal, and I thought, this is great, you know, great song. And so because we toured in America with Elton for 10 weeks, it charted in the States and charted in the UK. So, and it was a big, everybody sang it, you know, local bands sang it in the 70s. That was a big song.
So I love, you know, there's a bit towards the end where you think the song's finished, and then it goes boom, boom,
Yeah,
and then it
back
kicks
in.
back in, and that's the moment where it doesn't matter where you are, if
I
you're in
know.
a car, you're in the shower, I love that.
Here it comes again. Yeah.
Incredible song.
You know who was on that when I did my vocal in New York for that, and I was very nervous because it's like a rock pop vocal, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
very
I had
much.
to give it some heft, and I went into the studio. Elton was there, funnily enough, and you know, I was thinking, oh God, is this going to be all right? You know, and there were 3 black ladies, and they did the backing vocals, and one of them was Cissy Houston, Whitney's mum.
Wow.
And I watched them do the BVs backing vocals before I did my vocal, and I thought, oh my, these women are amazing, gospel singers from New York, you know, voices, like huge voices, and I was completely confronted. I thought, I'm not going to get the vocal. So I said to Elton, I'm really confronted, you know. I said, don't worry, you'll be fine. And I was really nervous. And he ended up, this is crazy to tell you about, he ended up running around the studio with his trousers around his ankles just to make me laugh. He said, come on, you can do it. Oh, you know. That's a stupid thing, crazy thing, but that's what he did. And I got the vocal.
You know, I've got to ask, because Kiki Dee is such a showbiz name. You know, it's very glamorous, and I love it because, you know, I know your original name, and even when we booked you to come on the flights, they all said, "Who's Pauline?" Because people just know you as Kiki Dee. So who came up with that kind of stage name, Kiki Dee?
Well, when I did my audition for Fontana in the beginning, there was a songwriter at the audition who I went on to get to know later on. And he came up with a stage name of Kinky Dee. Because everything at the time, you see, was Kinky Boots, Cookie, you know, 77 Sunset Strip, there was a character called Cookie, and it was all like cute 60s. Yeah. And I said to my dad, they can't call me that. Like, I want to be singing in 5 years. I said, they can't call me Kinky, you know. So we shortened it to Kiki.
Okay, that's a lot better than Kinky Dee. I think that would have been a little bit different.
Isn't that what's nice, though, is that it took me, can you imagine, a really down-to-earth Yorkshire lass like me, you know, moving to London fairly quickly and being called Kiki. And when I went home, you know, all my friends are going, what the hell? You know, what kind of name is that, you know? It took me a while to get used to it. But.
You know, when you look at the chart hits that you had, is there a favourite for you? So the one that you look back on with kind of that's probably up there as my favourite.
I like them all for different reasons. I particularly like Amoureuse, French song written by a lady called Véronique Sanson. She's still a big star in France. And at the time, in 73 it was, I got the hit with that. My first hit. At the time, she was married to Stephen Stills.
Okay.
Crosby, Stills. And I love that song.
Incredible. Beautiful. The vocal in that as well, it's just very delicate and it's just powerful as well.
What's lovely is that the orchestra, it's such an amazing orchestration. Elton produced that track. And it just builds and builds and builds. And the vocal just sits on the top and very delicate. It's a really good record, actually.
It's like, you know, when you think of a song sometimes, but that song's like a show within a song, if that makes sense. It's got so many different almost chapters. And that's the special thing about it. But it
was a long single as well, because in those days, the record company was a bit worried that it was over 4 minutes, and record radio stations weren't playing anything over 4 minutes. So, but eventually Capital Radio played it all the time, and that's how it broke in England, you know.
Very similar to Bohemian Rhapsody. They had the same kind of issue with that.
Yeah.
You could probably guess Shane Solomon's favourite song, because awkwardly in the car, before we picked you up today, we were singing Star loud, and then you got in that. We turned it down to pick you up because we didn't want to come across as the fanboys, and then you saw your face on the screen and you realised that we were listening to it. So that was very different for you. It was almost like a different era Star. It was very poppy, it was very fast paced. Loved it, very up tempo.
Great pop record.
Did you like it, or were you ever a little bit kind of dubious, like this is very different for me? Was it slightly unsettling in a sense of, I don't know how this is going to be taken by my fans?
I mean, I think I knew it was a hit record.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed recording it because it was a real challenge vocally. I did all the backing vocals myself, and they're really high, you know, if you're really high up. And it was great fun to record. I've always had a mixed image. I'm sometimes in my life I've envied, you know, like if you're a folk singer whose father was a musician in the west of Ireland, or you're a jazz singer, or you're a out-and-out pop singer, or you're a soul singer, and I've never fit into any particular niche. And it's a good and a bad thing. And my live show now is like that. You know, we go all over the place. My semi-acoustic show, you know, we do some of the Kiki songs. We don't do Star because we haven't found a way of doing that. But yeah, so it's that mix of identity that I've always had. But I've decided to enjoy it rather than worry about it.
It just shows how versatile you are as well as an artist, because you can go very high, but then you can bring it down and make it a little bit deeper. You know, that's nice, because
well, thank you,
when you listen to your music, you can kind of get transported into different zones, which, you know, I think that's a positive thing. Definitely.
It's more difficult for marketing, I think. People, I always say, you know, I'm the only older artist I know in the UK who, if you go and see them, you won't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, so it's keeps me on my toes.
Well, we've spoke about this before, and you know I'm a massive Queen fan, massive Freddie Mercury fan, and you you got to work with Queen and you performed with them. So how did that opportunity come about? And if you can tell us how it all kind of happened.
Well, at the time, it was the year of Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And it was that summer when there was a drought. Do you remember? And were you too young?
Yeah.
I've forgotten, sorry. Hyde Park, Queen did a free concert to 150,000 people in Hyde Park, and it was brown everywhere. There was no green. And Elton was in America, and Queen were under the same management as Elton. And so it all was like in-house, and they asked me to do a set. So I went on with a life-size cut-out version of Elton. Sang the song myself. I couldn't replace him with anybody else, you know. How do you replace Elton John? So I was sort of standing there with this
cardboard
thing and sang it then. Yeah, it was a brilliant concert. Yeah.
What were they like? What was Freddie like to be around? Because I know that, you know, they loved you. You know, you guys got on really well.
So lovely. Roger I know quite well, and Freddie. I don't know, and I know Brian as well, actually. Do you know what? They're all really nice. Freddie was so sweet.
Yeah.
I found him to be a real gentleman, very gentle, very warm, and just a very nice person, you know.
Didn't he give you a gift as well?
They gave me they gave me a framed photo of me. Not me, sorry, it was an aerial view of the gig in Hyde Park. It was all the people in the little stage. It looked tiny and they framed it beautifully, and they put "To Our Number One Girl." Queen signed it, "To Our Number One Girl." And I gave it to my nephew, because he was quite young, and I've got a niece who's actually here today.
Yeah.
And because she's a girl, I was always sort of with her a lot. And I don't know why that is, and I thought, I want to do something for Jason. So I gave it to him, and he's got it in his house to this day. You know?
I know you're actually, you've got a copy made that you were going to bring down.
I bought one. This is hysterical, I'll tell you this. So my nephew, Jason, did a copy of this photo for you. I thought I'll sign it and everything, you know, it'd be fun. So I went into my cupboard before I packed, and I had a couple of fan letters that I haven't replied to in a brown envelope, and I put a fan letter in my suitcase instead of the picture. So you can read my fan letter if you like.
I can see that instead.
I'll send it over to you.
Another thing that I look back, you know, I'm 30 and I wasn't alive when Live Aid happened, but you just get the impression that's never going to happen again. Something on that magnitude, and you performed on Live Aid, you know, and I watch it back, and that crowd reaction when you came on stage was huge. Can you remember the build up to Live Aid? Did you kind of feel, I'm going to be part of history here? Because what was the build up like, and the anticipation? Because all these names were getting announced, and they were just huge. So did you kind of get a feeling this is something special?
Well, you know, it was a bit of a treat for me, really, because it was 9 years after after the hit,
Yeah.
76, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And I was in a bit of a, what do I do next, which always happens to me. That's the name of the book, I think, what do I do next? And I ended up going into musical theatre for a while because I didn't know what to do. But Elton said, will you come to do Live Aid? Will you sing Don't Go Breaking My Heart? I said, yes, please, you know.
Wow.
And so I went along, and it was such an experience because I went along with my niece, actually, who is here in studio with us. And she was 16, I think, something like that at the time. And when we had the most wonderful day. We met all these fabulous people, and the press weren't bothering me because I wasn't, you know, billed or anything. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't hot as a pop star at that time. Wasn't, I mean, you know, it's a few years since I'd had Star in the Charts. So I just had a ball.
Just enjoyed it.
Yeah, and the fact that the thing that was so exciting wasn't it the biggest broadcast ever?
Yes.
Television-wise.
Worldwide.
And that was what felt quite extraordinary, that it went out to so many people live. You know, it's like, woof.
You know, we all need an anti-Kiki because you get a signed frame Queen photo. You get to go to Live Aid. I mean, that's incredible. Who was your favourite set to watch? So, you know, when you finished yours and you went backstage, was there somebody that you loved watching from kind of behind the scenes?
Well, I do think, from what I can remember, that Queen's got the day. Queen, you know, you never know with these festivals, the open air things, especially something as big as that. And I think it resurrected them. I've got a feeling, I might be wrong, someone will probably tell me I am online or something, but I think they weren't as big as they had been.
They had a break, didn't they, for a few?
In the 70s, yeah. And I think that show revived them, and now they're a national treasure. And I think Queen did the best set.
You know, when you went out for your bit and that you heard that crowd reaction, was that exciting? Because it was so loud. I mean, you watch it back now on YouTube and you just hear that eruption when you came on stage.
Well, I was so used to it because every time I worked with Elton in a big stadium, they went nuts anyway. But I probably was nervous. I had the most bizarre outfit on. I looked like I was wearing pink pajamas. And my 80s hair going like that, you know. It was quite fun.
You know, with Elton, you worked together many times, but you did have another chart hit in 1992, which went straight to the top again at number 2. So talk to us about that, you know, how that happened. Did he approach you and say, look, I'm going to do this cover, would love to do it with you? How did that all
Well, he was doing an album called Duets, and he had lots of various artists on it, Billy Joel, Bryan Adams, loads of people, all doing a duet. And he wanted to do True Love from High Society. And it's a very short song, like God Only Knows, you know, the Beach Boys song, very short, but lovely song. And I really thought that Grace Kelly sang a great version of it in the movie. Her voice was really good on it. And so we decided, you know, that would be the duet. He invited me to do a duet, and we did that.
And number 2 in the charts.
And it got to number 2.
Incredible. Yeah. I don't know if this is a rumour.
Mr. Blobby got to number 1. And
that would
so it's not so bad, is it? Losing to Mr. Blobby.
I don't know if this is a rumour, because you know what it's like, rumour mill and things that are said. But there were rumours that with Don't Go Breaking Your Heart, that originally it was meant to be Dusty Springfield singing that.
I don't know where that came from, actually.
Do you know if there's any truth in that? Because it went around, you know, in the kind of industry, but there's nothing to ever say that was the case.
Yeah, I was quite... It seems to be in the last 10, 15 years that's been the way. I know that Elton adored her, and I loved her.
You did backing vocals.
I did. I did backing vocals for her in the 60s, yeah. On Some of Your Loving and Little by Little.
Wow.
Because we had the same manager, but that's another story. But I think probably my reading of it is that he would like to have sung with Dusty at some point. I was at the in-house. I was on Rocket Records. Elton had produced 2 albums.
Yeah.
Gus Dudgeon, the producer of it, Elton's producer, said to Elton, you know what? This song that Bernie's sent the lyrics over for, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, that could be a duet with Kiki. But he wasn't going to do it as a duet. So I don't quite know where that rumour came from, but we respect Dusty because we love her.
Well, let's talk about Dusty. What was she like to work with? Because you did backing vocals for her. I mean, she is just an absolute. She's up there with the
totally.
icons. So, what was she like to work with?
Wow, I mean, I was a bit younger because I was 16 when I got signed, and then I got a manager, and then he signed her, and I was like, oh, it's Dusty Springfield. Because also the Springfields, do you remember? I don't know if people out there remember that she had the hair, and then she had the eyes, and those dresses. You know, you're too young. Big hoop dresses. She was fantastic. Wow. She was a bit of a diva.
Really?
Quite, yeah, because we did the San Remo Song Festival in 1965. And I think she'd had an argument with our manager, Vic. And I came out to my room, you know, my little box room. She was in the Star Suite. No, I'm joking. and this vase of flowers went down the corridor from Dusty to Vic, you know. So she was having... But fabulous singer, fabulous woman, very sensitive, and she had a few issues, you know, and highly emotional, and which is what made her such a great singer.
Wow, you've worked with everyone. It's incredible.
I know.
I wanted to talk about Rocketman, the film, because I love that. It was great to see. But you had somebody play you in the film, you know?
Lovely.
What was that like? Did you watch it, I'm assuming?
I've seen it, yeah.
What was it like to see somebody play you? Were you kind of like, oh my, you know, this is very close to how it was? Like, what was it like to see?
Well, she had a fag in her hand for a start in the studio, which was a bit weird.
Did you smoke?
I did then.
Okay.
We were all stupid enough to smoke in those days. But it was a bit odd because she had the dungarees on from the video in the studio, which I never would have done. You know, the dungarees for the video. But she did actually message me. She was very sweet. And I was chuffed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was chuffed to be in it because the one thing that I thought was odd about the film, the movie, was that the band weren't in it, and they were such an integral part of Elton's life, you know, David Johnston, Dee Murray, Nigel Olsson. So I thought that was unusual. So for me to be in it was flattering, you know.
So you mentioned there, obviously, West End, and that was kind of very different for you because you went from music, performing, and then suddenly a completely different world, essentially, with the West End. So how did that come about for you? Because am I right in saying you won an Olivier Award, which is kind of like the top, nominated, sorry.
Yeah, I was nominated, and I think Imelda Staunton won it that year, which is no me. So, you know, at least it was a great actress. I got offered an audition for Blood Brothers with Bill Kenwright, the producer. And it came at the right time for me because I'd never really worked in a cast before with lots of other actors. And it was in the West End. It was touring around first. We toured for a year and developed the show, Blood Brothers. And by the time we hit the West End for the opening night, we were just so together. You know, we toured it everywhere. And so it was a great chapter in my life in that I was working with a team of people and doing something new, you know.
When you think about it, when you perform live in that sense and you're doing the shows every night, there's no room for error, essentially, because you're performing. Was that a nerve-wracking experience, or was it something you just, do you know what, if it goes wrong, we move forward?
It was scary.
Really?
Especially at the beginning, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I did probably in the end over 1,000 performances of it, you know. The thing that towards the end, I was dying to stop in the end because in different acts of the show, there was the same music. You know, the song would repeat from the act one in act two.
Yeah.
And we had a live band up on a balcony there. And I'd forget which scene we were in because especially if we did 2 shows a day, which happened twice, Wednesdays and Saturdays, I'd hear this music. I think, is this act one of the first show? Are we in act 2? Where are we? And that was when I started to think, oh, maybe I need a break.
It's quite grueling, isn't it?
Because I was 40, actually, when I did it, and very hard work. I mean, there wasn't a lot of dancing in it, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, how It is, but to do live theatre, I take my hat off to those actors because, you know, you do the same thing every night, the same script, you know, and it's hard.
It's amazing that you've been able to do what you love for your whole life, you know, and your career, and you're still, you know, now with Carmelo.
Yeah.
And you do your show, it's kind of acoustic, and it's kind of nice, and it's different versions of your songs. So how did you meet Carmelo? Because you two, you know, we spoke about Elton and your relationship, but you and Carmelo's up there, you know, musically, you just work well together.
We've been working together for 30 years, and we don't aim for, you know, big fame. We wanted freedom. I was 47 when we started work together. And the guy that put us together was a chap called Steve Brown. And he used to work for Dick James Music, and they looked after Elton's music, his songs in the early days. So, and he ran Rocket Records. So I knew Steve.
Yeah.
And I went to see him and I said, I don't know what to do next. You know, I'm a bit stuck. Going up to 50, you know, what am I going to do now? And he said, why don't you, I've got a guitarist I know that I think you could work well together. Why don't we book you out on a tour supporting Vanessa May, and you go out and do 6 songs, voice and guitar? And I sort of looked at him like he was mental. You know, I said, you're joking. So we ended up doing this, and it was bizarre because Vanessa May at the time, the violinist, was doing big theatres around the UK. And we just walked out and did 6 songs before she came on. And it took them a few minutes to realise who it was, you know, the audience. And so that's how we started working together. He was a very innovative man, you know. We lost him a few years ago, but fantastic, you know, very creative, and I liked the fact that he was open for trying new things.
Yeah.
You know.
That's incredible. And you say there about, with Carmelo, a sense of freedom, I guess, because when you're signed to a label, it's very strict at times, and you're kind of, you do go the direction they want you to go. Do you feel now that you can do Kiki Dee on your terms, you know, authentically, and just do what you really want to do right now?
I do. It's always hard work.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous before any show I do.
That's a good thing, though, they say, isn't it?
I never lose that.
Yeah.
And also, particularly as sometimes the audience don't know what they're going to get. So they haven't come, you know, it's easy to go, I don't mean it's easy, but if you go out and do a greatest hits show and with your band and you do everything as it was on the record, it's kind of all known songs, you know. It's easier in some ways than what we do because we experiment. We've experimented with East-West musicians. You know, we did an album called Where Rivers Meet in the late 90s, which is very experimental. And but I'm proud that I've moved on and tried. And, you know, I'm at the age now where I'm kind of over myself. Does that make sense? Because you're too young to know, but when you get to a certain age, you sort of don't take yourself quite so seriously.
Yeah,
you know?
That's a good thing though, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm coming towards the end of my career now, but I'm just taking it as it comes. And as long as I've got the energy and I can sing the songs, you know, with quality, you know, I've got the range and I keep working on myself. It keeps me fit. You know, vocally I have to do warm-ups and exercises. Keeps my spirit young. Yeah. So that's where I am, really.
When you say towards the end of your career, you don't have plans for retiring anytime soon? Because, I mean, your voice is so strong. So is this something
well, you have to come and see me and find out.
I will. But you're not planning on retiring, are you, soon?
Well, it's in the back of my mind, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's just the energy, the emotional, I was saying to someone earlier, the emotional energy and the physical energy, and the fact that it is an unusual show and it's always a challenge. I'm just taking it each year, you know, maybe a year or 2 years more.
Do you know, it's one of those things, I think, because it's such a big passion of yours, it's maybe one of those times where you step away and a year later you think, God, I want to be on that stage doing what I love.
Tell you what, do you know why I'm lucky? I've had a big break recently and I watched a lot of the Olympics, and I do like sport, actually, generally. And the truth is, you know, I watched a documentary on Roger Federer, and he had to stop when he was 41. And it devastated him, you know, you could tell, quite an emotional man. And I've got to 77 and I'm still doing it. How lucky am I? From 16, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So I really don't think I will feel like that. Honestly, I don't.
You got an amazing voice, and hopefully we'll get to see you perform, and we'll come and go to one of your shows. But one thing I wanted to talk about was Elton, because you performed with him a couple of years ago at one of his shows in America.
Yes.
So that was just to see you both back on the stage, because he was excited, you were excited, and you owned that stage. I mean, your confidence.
Did I? Oh, good.
Seeing you running down and you were getting the crowd up and going. How did it feel to be back with Elton? Because it was almost like a reflection on the friendship, and it was like, let's do this one last time.
Well, do you know what was the funniest side about it is Elton took the key down, a tone and a half, which is any musicians out there, it's quite a lot. So I was quite low. I couldn't, for me. And so I couldn't get that punch in my voice, which I wanted to get. And I had no idea what the sound was like. But there were 55,000 people in Dodger Stadium going nuts, so who cares?
Yeah. It was brilliant. You bounced off each other. He was having fun. So have you watched it back, the performance?
I've only seen it once, actually, on Disney, yeah. I don't like watching myself much. No. I get a bit,
So when he said about dropping, you just said the tone down, is that because his voice has changed?
Yes.
Okay, so was that difficult for you to adapt to then? How far in advance did he tell you?
Well, we've done it a couple of times, like in the lower key, and it's fair enough. Lots of people, I haven't taken my keys down yet, but Music in Me is getting a little bit high for me now. Take it down a little bit. But also with acoustic performances, I can blues, I've got the music in me up.
Yeah.
I don't have to always hit the very high note. I can, ain't gonna trouble in my life. You know what I'm saying? You don't always have to stay on the melody of the pop record. But I mean, to get to be asked to go and do it was just special. And also it makes up for not doing Glastonbury.
Well, do you say special. Well, just getting a note from you then was special for us. I mean, that was a moment. So yeah, incredible. Good,
bless you.
Great voice. What's next for you now? What kind of plans? So I know you said potentially, but have you got any shows coming up that you're looking forward to? Well,
we've got 12 more shows this year. Carmelo's just had a surgery on it, but he's fine. And so he's had a break, as well, and I've had a break. And we're going to carry on into next year, going around the UK, going to Ireland next year.
Wow.
To do some dates, and we do Scotland and we do Wales, and we haven't been down here a lot, so I think we have to try and do a gig down here.
Try and do Cornwall, and maybe duet with Shane. That'll be something.
There you go.
Kiki Dee, thank you so much. That was amazing to just talk about your career, and you've done so much, and like you said, we've covered so much because you've done this since the age of 16. I mean,
I know.
What an experience. So thank you.
It's so nice to meet you, because I do remember this call from this 15-year-old saying, will you do an interview? And I said, yes, I will.
And my voice is a lot deeper now. I've gone down a couple of tones, that's for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Amazing. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.